Hi, my name is Elizabeth Doherty Thomas. I am co-founder of the Doherty Relationship Institute. In this video, I want to talk about a basic concept called transparency. It came out of endless conversations with my couples therapist father, Bill Doherty, and this idea of being free of having to put on airs, to put on a professional hat, to sort of play a role as a clinician. And he has been told in numerous ways that his tone of voice is the same, whether he's talking in a training, talking with you one-on-one, or talking with couples. And that's a little bit of the transparency, right? He's just fully himself. And couples pick up on that, which I think makes sense. But also the idea of transparency, as I was really pulling out of how he works with couples, one thing I noticed that is important to him, and it may not be important in all models, and that's fine. But the idea that this is a really weird idea, by the way. Nobody would do this. But if you had a journalist, like let's say they're investigating couples therapy, and a session just ended, and the journalist was like, like after a football game or sports game, like, how did the game go? That kind of idea. So this is silly. Nobody would ever do this. But that if you asked the therapist, how do you think that session went? And, where do you think things are at? And then you asked both spouses, partners in the couples therapy the same question. Transparency should be, this is our desired view, that all three people are kind of on the same board, that they all have a very kind of shared understanding and a shared sense of how the session went, that everybody could see the contribution everybody was making, that if anybody questioned anything, that they could ask it, and that there was just this sort of tight focus on the interactions between them, the interactions maybe with the therapist, and there's just not a lot of insecurity or clients being able to be like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on here? That they can call it. If somebody is an assertive client, they can call it. Similarly, if the client is sort of looking at the clock all the time and not really investing a lot of energy, they're really butting you. But there's a transparency in a graceful way of calling into question whether the couples therapy has enough juice to it. And if not, that's just fine. So there's a way in which I think we get convinced in the culture of couples therapy that we have to be really, really good. We have to be the experts. We have to perform well. We have to get the couples to really connect, really bond, and live happily ever after. And none of us actually know that that's as easy as that. But we can get, I feel, very performative and kind of anxious, and we can have all these thoughts that we don't want to share. And it's true that we shouldn't share unhealthy thoughts, but in the Doherty approach, you actually learn, or we suggest anyway, you don't have to buy anything we're saying either, that a lot of your unhealthy thoughts are actually clinical mistakes you're making by not maybe challenging when you need to, not pointing things out when you need to, holding too much back, sort of doing so much empathy that you don't have room in the clinical air to be able to lightly challenge people. So there's a lot of ways we can go kind of awry, and most of us kind of act slightly differently depending on the couple, and that's fine. But just wanted to leave you with the idea of clinical transparency, and that crazy idea of the journals were to ask people leaving a session that there should be high levels of synchronicity, not a lot of, well, I don't know what we did this session, one or both spouses says, and then the therapist may be saying, oh my God, we had such a big breakthrough, or the gap is what we're worried about. Not that every session has to be magical and wonderful, but that everybody feels like we came in this way and we came out that way. So if this kind of nerdery is interesting to you, check us out at thedohertyapproach.com.